The elites want you to shut up. You have no business participating in this society. You can think the way you think. You can vote the way you vote, but just keep your mouth shut. Whether you're daring to call an illegal alien murderer an illegal alien, or whether you're a rape victim and you dare to vote for Donald Trump, or what if you're an NCAA women's swimming champion, but you tie with a biological man? You object, you shut up. We're going to unpack all those stories and a whole lot more. We're brought to you by the Electronic Payments Coalition. My name is Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Thanks for watching us live on Rumble, noon Eastern, as we are each and every day. Thanks for being part of our ever-growing audience. And also, thanks for watching all of our segments that we put out later in the day on video. Whatever platform you like watching your videos, we're there, and we appreciate you watching and liking and subscribing. Make sure you do the same with our audio-only podcast, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or Google or wherever it is you're getting your podcast. We're happy to be a part of your infotainment day. Well, you remember this moment in the State of the Union when Marjorie Taylor Greene basically dared Joe Biden to actually say Laken Riley's name. He did, even though he got her name wrong. Here's how it went.
I'd be a winner. Not really. Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, so Lincoln Riley, by the way, is the head coach of the USC Trojans. They're joining the Big Ten this year. Good luck, Trojans. Fight on. It's not Lincoln Riley. Her name is Laken Riley. Marjorie Taylor Greene saying, say her name, and he doesn't say it right. In fact, you look at the pin right there that he's holding. That's a pin that Marjorie Taylor Greene gave him as he was entering the House chamber. It literally says her name on it, spelled properly, Laken. And he says Lincoln Riley. And then he said this.
An innocent young woman who was killed by an illegal. That's right. But how many of thousands of people being killed by illegals? To her parents, I say, my heart goes out to you, having lost children myself. I understand.
Oh, well, of course he had to make it about himself and his children who died. It's not quite the same thing. I'm not sure that your son, Beau, a grown adult, the Attorney General of Delaware, was killed by an illegal alien who shouldn't have been in this country. And did you catch what he said there? Sure, she was died by an illegal, but what about the thousands of people who are killed by legals every day? Legals. You and I are legals. I'm sure that's really exciting to know that the president thinks of you as a legal. We're called citizens, Mr. President, American citizens. But it is interesting that he acknowledges the fact that thousands of people are being murdered every day in the Democrat-run cities that have turned into war zones under his and his party's leadership. But if you're a Democrat and you see that moment in the State of the Union, you only have one real objection to what he had to say. And it had nothing to do with the policy that led to the murder of Laken Riley. And it has nothing to do with the fact that we live in these war zones in these major American cities where there is rampant crime, violent crime, and murder. No, your heart goes out to the illegal alien murderer because Joe Biden accurately referred to him as illegal.
Dan.
Now, you should have said undocumented, but that's not a big thing, okay? What's the big thing about it?
No, I actually wasn't even going to ask about that. I was just going to ask more about the moment, but you do think that he should have...
That really is kind of my favorite part there. Dana Bash puts her on television and says, hey, I want you to react to this moment. And Nancy Pelosi's initial gut reaction is, okay, fine. He shouldn't have said illegal. He should have said undocumented. But is that really a big deal? Come on. Dana Bash is like, actually, we weren't even going to ask you about that. It never occurred to us that that was the problem. By the way, Nancy Pelosi has now had to apologize because she downplayed the importance of calling an illegal alien, which, by the way, is a legal term. That's what the federal government designates these people. That's how they're designated in the Justice Department and in the Department of Homeland Security for their legal proceedings. But later on, the next day, Joe Biden got the message, and he recognized how bad it was.
Do you regret using the word illegal to describe immigrants last night, sir?
Well, I don't regret it. Technically not supposed to be here.
Yeah, the journalist. Do you sometimes feel like we live in two different worlds? You get your moment to ask the president a question with a roaring 747 jet engine screaming in the background as he's about to go up the short stairs because he can't make it up the big boy stairs at the Air Force One. And you have this great moment. Not a lot of people have the privilege, the opportunity to ask the president of the United States a question on our behalf. And this reporter decides that the question is, do you regret using the term illegal when referring to immigrants? And of course, the natural answer is, well, no, not if I'm referring to illegal immigrants. Is there no distinction? And of course, to the American left, there is no distinction. They think that everyone around the world has a right to come here, whether they wait in line or go through the legal process or not. And no one there seemed like they wanted to ask the more important question. I don't know. Let's set aside for a second whether you have any regret using the proper legal term, illegal immigrant. How about this one? Do you regret having policies that led to the murder of a young, innocent woman? Anyone want to ask that question? Anyone want to throw that one out there? But of course, Joe Biden flummoxed by this. He's like, wow, technically he's not supposed to be here. What do you mean technically he's not supposed to be here? By every possible account, he is in this country illegally. And Joe conceding that technically he's not supposed to be here, aren't you conceding the fact that technically you should have deported him instead of welcomed him and protected him? Again, all of those events leading to the murder of Laken Riley. But this snowball kept rolling down the mountain and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Once again on Capitol Hill the next day, woke squad member congresswomen see what the real problem here with Biden's border disaster that led to the murder of a young girl.
You should have used the word undocumented. I don't believe that the president's heart is with the word illegal. I think, frankly, he shouldn't have responded to a very disrespectful Republican member who was shouting at him, the president of the United States. That is not appropriate.
Yeah, that's not appropriate. So the problem here is using the term illegal instead of undocumented and shouting from the gallery to the president of the United States. That's the problem. Again, not the crime in our streets, not the murder of innocent children at the hands of these policies that led directly to it. By the way, last time we checked with her, wasn't she rallying on behalf of Hamas terrorists that murdered and raped and decapitated over 1,000 people in Israel? I mean, she's the one to lecture us on proper decorum and values. Well, finally, Joe Biden had to do some real damage control. He went on MSNBC and cleaned up this mess that he created over the weekend.
I noticed the look of surprise on your face when you walked into the chamber and you saw Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. It was priceless. You feigned shock at seeing her. But during your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. It's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
He's a murderer. He's a murderer. And he's twisting himself into knots. The left, Jonathan Capehart of MSNBC and the Washington Post, are forcing him at gunpoint to apologize to the murderer for calling him illegal instead of undocumented. By the way, he has documents, by the way. Otherwise, why would we know he's from Venezuela? Why would we know he has undocumented is a fake designation. There's no such thing as an undocumented person. He has documents. He just doesn't have legal documents, which means he has illegal documents because he's an illegal immigrant. But put all of that aside. He's a murderer. And they're worried about his feelings? I'm told, I have it on very good authority, that the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, I should say, they're very concerned about these suburban moms out there, these suburban moms in Michigan, suburban moms in Pennsylvania and Atlanta and Georgia and down in Arizona, these suburban moms, some of them in Pennsylvania, although really I think the problem in Pennsylvania is stuff in the ballot box in Philadelphia. But they're very worried about these suburban moms, the suburban moms in Wisconsin, outside of Milwaukee, you know, because they have to go to their Tupperware parties and their Chardonnay parties, and they got to hang out with the other moms on the side of the soccer field as they watch 6-year-old kids chase a ball around. And they don't want to admit that they voted for Donald Trump. You know, they want to wring their hands and they want to feel good about themselves. They don't want to feel guilty about all of the benefits that they have because they made good choices in their life. It feels wrong because, well, Oprah and Meghan Markle have explained to them that they are privileged. They have white privilege. And so they feel really awful about voting for Trump because he's a meanie face. That's what I'm told, at least. So any of you suburban moms out there right now, or if you know a suburban mom in your life, can you just send them this message, please, or maybe share this video with them? Because if you feel icky about voting for Donald Trump, you need to recognize who you will be voting for. Joe Biden and his party and his partners in the media, in evaluating the circumstances of the murder of this 22-year-old girl, this innocent girl, Laken Riley, they have determined that she is not your priority. Excuse me, she is not their priority. They really don't care about your daughter. They really don't care about you or your family and your sensibilities and your very hurt feelings when your daughter gets murdered. No, their priority is the illegal alien murderer that killed your daughter. That is what they have demonstrated here. So I suggest to you that you get a Biden yard sign and you start cutting your hair like Kamala Harris and you wear a Biden-Harris 4 more years button everywhere you go when you've got your Tupperware parties or your Chardonnay tastings or your soccer games. And then on Election Day, or even better, a couple of weeks before Election Day, so you can get that dang ballot in the mail ahead of time, just in case the machines don't work on Election Day, because it's crazy how that happens when Republicans vote on Election Day. You get your ballot in and you vote for the guy who didn't apologize using the term illegal alien. You should vote for the guy who, while Joe Biden was doing this on MSNBC, he was meeting with Laken Riley's grieving mother. He was embracing Laken Riley's grieving mother, saying this should have never happened. And if I'm president, it won't happen to another mother in this country. Not on his watch. It's just that simple. In fact, that man, Donald Trump, who did meet with Laken Riley's family over the weekend, while Joe Biden was apologizing for doing irrevocable harm to her murderer by not referring to him as undocumented, Donald Trump had a rally. Benny Johnson was there with his camera. And if you're wondering how Donald Trump is going to approach the whole illegal alien versus undocumented migrant question, this should leave no doubt.
When I say he was an illegal alien, he was an illegal immigrant, he was an illegal migrant, and he shouldn't have been in our country, and he never would have been under the Trump policy. And Biden should be apologizing for apologizing to this killer.
He's not wrong. He's not wrong. And you know what? Let's let Tim Scott have the last word on this, because he was asked the same question about the labels that we're putting on the murderer and hurting his feelings, and even more importantly, the party who protects the murderer's feelings at all costs.
Joe Biden is more worried about using the word illegal or undocumented. The word he should use is murderer. Here we have Donald Trump, our president, sitting down with Laken Riley's family, and you have Joe Biden apologizing for what word he used. We need a president who's serious about saving American lives by closing the southern border with a Trump wall. We need a president who is serious about saving American lives by reinstating the Remain in Mexico policy. Maria, we need a president who is serious enough about saving 70,000 Americans who are dying to fentanyl by getting serious and tough on our border. We don't need a president who's going to backstep and apologize for using the word illegal versus undocumented when the word he should just use is murderer. That is disrespectful to the Riley family. And I'm so thankful that President Trump sat down with the family and made the commitment that I would make as well, which is simply, we will close our southern border and save the sons and daughters of this nation by putting America first.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely positively presidential. Vice presidential. Just speculating. A quick word from our friends over at the Electronic Payments Coalition, and specifically handsoffmyrewards.com. Millions of Americans earn and use credit card rewards. Corporate megastores want to take those rewards away. Boo. Rewards that we use on groceries and school supplies. The cash back that we use to save on gas or to grow our small businesses. And of course, let's not forget travel miles. I live and die off the travel miles I get on my credit card. We use those to make memories, to visit loved ones, to have loved ones come and visit us. The Durbin-Marshall credit card bill would eliminate credit card rewards. No more travel miles, no more cash back. When lawmakers in D.C. help corporate megastores line their pockets, you and I, American families, pay for it. And that's just wrong. Tell your senator to oppose the Durbin-Marshall credit card bill. Go to handsoffmyrewards.com. Handsoffmyrewards.com and take action today. Nancy Mace, also from Southern California, like Tim Scott, was invited onto This Week with George Stephanopoulos. I still like to call it This Week with David Brinkley, but replaced by George Stephanopoulos, and so no one watches the show anymore. But that's hard to fit on the title screen for ABC News, so for some reason they're calling it This Week with George Stephanopoulos. Anywho, Nancy Mace was asked to come on the show and comment on the 2024 presidential election. That's all she knew. As she began her segment, they played a video of Nancy Mace detailing the fact that she was a teenage rape victim. And because of that, she has tried to employ her best political efforts with the Republican Party to make sure that any abortion legislation that the party endorses includes exceptions for rape. This really has nothing to do with anyone's position on abortion. We're not discussing that here, but I just tell you that that's the reason why Nancy Mace has been public about what happened to her, because it's personal for her. And let's face it, when we're making legislation and forming our opinions about abortion, your personal experience certainly plays into it. So George Stephanopoulos plays the video of her explaining about how she, as a teenage girl, was raped, and then asked this question.
This morning, and you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and two separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape. How do you square your endorsement of Donald Trump with the testimony we just saw?
Well, I will tell you, I was raped at the age of 16. And any rape victim will tell you, I've lived for 30 years with an incredible amount of shame over being raped. I didn't come forward because of that judgment and shame that I felt. And it's a shame that you will never feel, George. And I'm not going to sit here on your show and be asked a question meant to shame me. about another potential rape victim. I'm not gonna do that.
It's actually not about shaming you. It's a question about Donald
you
Trump.
are shaming
You've
me.
endorsed Donald Trump for president.
Right.
Donald Trump has been found liable for rape by a jury. Donald Trump has been found liable for defaming the victim of that rape by a jury. It's been affirmed by a judge.
It was not a criminal court case, number one. Number two, I live with shame. And you're asking me a question about my political choices, trying to shame me as a rape victim, and I find it disgusting. And quite frankly, E. Jean Carroll's comments when she did get the judgment, joking about what she was going to buy, it makes it harder for women to come forward when they make a mockery out of rape, when they joke about it.
Doesn't it make it harder for women to come forward when they?
It makes it harder when other women joke about it, and she's joked about it. I find it offensive, and I also find it offensive that you're trying to shame me with this question.
I'm not trying to shame you.
You are.
In fact,
I have dealt with this for 30 years. You know how hard it was to tell my story 5 years ago when they were doing a fetal heartbeat bill and there were no exceptions for rape, incest, or rape or incest in there. I had to tell my story because no other woman was coming forward. No rape victims were represented. And you're trying to shame me this morning.
I'm just asking.
And I find it offensive. And this is why women won't come forward.
Women won't come forward because they're defamed by those who perpetrate rape.
They are judged and they're shamed. And you're trying to shame me this morning. I think it's disgusting.
I'm not shaming you at all.
I told my story. It took me 25 years to tell my story. I was judged for it. I still get judged for it today.
I'm asking you a very simple question.
Hey, I'm just here asking questions. I'm reasonable host of Good Morning America. I'm America's morning man. And I'm just asking a reasonable question. What's wrong with that? This man is a despicable piece of scum. You know, I interview people for a living. Daily, multiple people on my morning radio show in Washington, D.C. Politicians, members of the community, activists, what have you. Sometimes I interview people who I don't agree with. And of course, I want to be able to get important information from them. Sometimes it's going to be a spicy interview. I can't imagine ever being in a place where I use someone's personal tragedy, a sexual assault when they were a teenage girl, use that as a talking point to argue a political position with them. And what we just saw from George Stephanopoulos, this is Maoist behavior. This is Nancy Mace called it perfectly here. A public shaming. Let me tell you something. If she voted the right way, or if she supported the right candidate, or if she were a Democrat or pro-abortion, she wouldn't be treated this way. She is only asked about her personal situation because she's supporting the wrong president. He even started the entire interview saying, well, you announced that you're supporting Donald Trump, so I got to ask you, how could you possibly do this? You know, by the way, she could also say, well, I'm also a mother of a child, and since Joe Biden is responsible for the murder of Laken Riley, you know, I've got to ask every mother of a young woman out there, how could you possibly vote for Joe Biden? You see how this game is played? This is despicable. You've got the spectacle of George Stephanopoulos trying to mansplain to Nancy Mace about how she should behave as a rape victim. Mansplaining to Nancy Mace about why women are afraid to come forward and blow the whistle on their rapist and tell their story about being a victim. No, it's because of what happened to E. Jean Carroll, not because of what I'm doing to you. You realize that if Tucker Carlson or Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham, if they conducted themselves this way, do you realize how over their career would be? Do you realize how they would absolutely be done, dead? Turn in your keys, clean out your desk. You're done here. But George Stephanopoulos, I mean, he's look at how reasonable he is. He's everybody's brother-in-law. He's Uncle George. And, you know, this is a good time to remind you who exactly George Stephanopoulos is as he's delving into Nancy Mace's past and trying to reach political conclusions. Well, Greg Kelly, a journalist and anchor over at Newsmax, he took a moment here to remind everyone. Here was George Stephanopoulos' book that he wrote after he left the Clinton administration, Bill Clinton's presidency. He was part of the campaign, and then he was the White House spokesperson for many years before he left. Oh, yeah, you didn't know that? Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The political editor for ABC News, or no, what is this title now? I think he's senior executive editor or something. He's the host and anchor of Good Morning America every day and the host and anchor of their most important political show This Week every Sunday. And no, he's not a journalist. He's not a trained reporter. He's a political operative. He ran communications for the Clinton campaign. This is what Andrew Breitbart used to call the Democrat media complex, the revolving door between the powers of American politics and then equal, if not greater power, sitting at the desk of American media. And it's across the board. Go look at what Jake Tapper did before he got a TV show. Go look into what Chuck Todd did before he got a TV show. Jen Psaki is a perfect example now over on MSNBC. It goes on and on and on. So now here's George Stephanopoulos. This was his book. It was called All Too Human, A Political Education. He talked about the scandals during the Clinton campaign and the Clinton presidency. And for those of you who don't remember, they used to refer to women in Bill Clinton's life who could damage him politically. They used to refer to them as bimbos. Yeah, when they came forward and spoke with reporters and told their story about how Bill Clinton was a little too extra handsy and friendly with them, let's just face it, a little rapey with them, they would refer to it as bimbo eruptions. Here we go. Because of my defense of Clinton against past bimbo eruptions had been predicated on my belief that he wouldn't create new ones. Of course, he did with Monica Lewinsky. I looked down at the card, then back at her face. Sweet, sweet Connie, my first bimbo eruption. Sweet, sweet Connie was a young woman who was trying to tell George Stephanopoulos that Bill Clinton had forced himself on her. And to George Stephanopoulos, that's a bimbo eruption. We survived our first bimbo eruption. So says George Stephanopoulos in his book. So Nancy Mace is just the latest in a string of women who are publicly shamed, mocked, ridiculed by not just George Stephanopoulos, but you know who helped head up the bimbo eruption squad on the Clinton campaign? That would be his wife, Hillary Clinton. In fact, Time magazine did a whole story about how the White House, the Clinton White House, covered up the scandals of his presidency. Deep water, how the president's men tried to hinder the Whitewater investigation. Who's that young man standing behind Bill Clinton, coordinating the cover-up? That's George Stephanopoulos. That's who just went on the attack against Nancy Mace. Because Nancy Mace, well, she committed the original sin. She's supporting Donald Trump. Actually, it's a combination sin. She is supporting Donald Trump while being a woman. You see, the one demographic that Joe Biden can count on right now is the Nancy Mace demographic. Young, professional, successful, single women. So she must be destroyed. She must be publicly humiliated. She must be publicly shamed, which is exactly what he attempted to do. The difference is Nancy Mace was the first woman to attend the Citadel in South Carolina. She's been in tough situations before. And George Stephanopoulos, I'm pretty sure she could bust him in two if she wanted to. He picked the wrong woman. But let's be clear about something. What George Stephanopoulos did there really isn't about Nancy Mace. It's about all the other women, whether they have a public profile or whether they're you or another woman in your life. This is about sending a message to all the other women out there that if you dare to do what she did, if you dare to come forward and publicly support Donald Trump, oh, we'd hate to see what's in your closet. We'd hate to dig up your skeletons. He's sending a message that this is how these people are to be treated. One other thing about who George Stephanopoulos is, I'll never forget this moment too. This was the New Hampshire debate in 2012 in New Hampshire. He got to moderate the debate, even though everybody in the Republican National Committee, which at the time was run by Michael Steele, who is now a host and regular on MSNBC, so connect those dots, if you will. Everybody knew that George Stephanopoulos was the political hack operative that I just laid out for you. And yet somehow the RNC agreed to have him moderate the debate of our candidates. And look at this question that he drew out of nowhere.
Governor Romney, I want to go straight to you. Senator Santorum has been very clear in his belief that the Supreme Court was wrong when it decided that a right to privacy was embedded in the Constitution. And following from that, he believes that states have the right to ban contraception. Now, I should add that he said he's not recommending that states do that. Well, I'll be clear. Absolutely. I'm giving you your due.
We're talking about 10th Amendment and the right of states.
But I do want to get to that core question. Governor Romney, do you believe that states have the right to ban contraception, or is that trumped by a constitutional right to privacy?
George, this is an unusual topic that you're raising. The states have a right to ban contraception. I can't imagine a state banning contraception. I can't imagine the circumstances where a state would want to do so. And if I were a governor of a state or a legislator of a state, I would totally and completely oppose any effort to ban contraception. So you're asking, given the fact that there's no state that wants to do so, and I don't know of any candidate that wants to do so, you're asking, could it constitutionally be done? We can ask our constitutionalist here.
Yeah, that was actually a good moment. And Mitt Romney had some funny moments there. But yeah, if you're confused as Mitt Romney was at that moment, you have every right to be. Rick Santorum once said that the 10th Amendment suggests that states have the right to ban Constitution. There's no right to privacy. And so therefore, Mitt Romney, do you want to ban contraception? And everyone's like, what the hell? Not literally up until that moment, literally no one was talking about any kind of proposed ban on contraception. Nobody was interested in that. Nobody wanted to do that. And if Rick Santorum wrote about it or said it sometime, it was a hypothetical question about what states' rights are versus what the Supreme Court can dictate. But that moment where George Stephanopoulos injected that issue into the campaign, that then led to the next month, a young Georgetown law student named Sandra Fluke giving testimony in Congress about how she should have not just the right to contraception, but have federally funded contraception for her health needs. Rush Limbaugh commented on that and got into a little bit of trouble. They wanted to cancel him because of how he characterized what Sandra Fluke was asking the American taxpayer to subsidize. Of course, that became an issue for Barack Obama in the Obamacare discussions in 2012 for the presidential campaigns. And, well, do you think that's an accident? Do you think these things just happen? Let me tell you something. Over the next couple of weeks, you are going to see more and more journalists, more and more politicians, and you'll see the Biden campaign picking up on this issue, calling Donald Trump a rapist. Oh, one other beautiful thing about all of this from Mr. Journalist George Stephanopoulos, who said at the beginning of this segment, here, let's play it for you once again. Watch now and listen.
This morning, and you've endorsed Donald Trump for president. Judges and two separate juries have found him liable for rape and for defaming the victim of that rape.
That's inaccurate. In fact, it's just flat out wrong. In fact, I'll go so far as to say it's a bald-faced lie. In fact, the jury in the E. Jean Carroll defamation case, it wasn't a criminal case. It's a much lower evidentiary bar and a lower standard to find responsibility versus guilt. He used the words there, liable, not guilty of rape, liable for rape. But even that is a lie. In fact, the jury in the E. Jean Carroll defamation suit did not reach a conclusion on whether Donald Trump had sexually assaulted, had raped E. Jean Carroll. They just decided that he had defamed her. So this entire thing is based and premised on a lie, but I'll go back to my original point. This is what George Stephanopoulos does because he's not a journalist. He is a political operative, a political communications expert, and he has now started this narrative. And now you will see it, I assure you, in many, many other places, in many other parts of the media, in pop culture, and in political shows. Donald Trump the rapist, Donald Trump the rapist. What does it say to the victims of rape? What does it say to women who feel like their protections are not being looked after, that they are victims and being victimized all over again by this man, and blah, 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 blah. George Stephanopoulos went there. George Stephanopoulos started it. George Stephanopoulos knew exactly what he was doing. As great as Nancy Mace was, and as valiant as she was, as effective as she was, it's done now. George Stephanopoulos has started the new narrative, the new political narrative, because his job is not to be a journalist. His job is not to deliver facts clearly. His job is not to inform his viewers. His job is to use his position to win an election for his party. It's the same thing he did when he worked on the Clinton campaign and worked in the Clinton White House. The only difference now is that ABC News and Disney, who owns ABC News, they pay him to do it now. They pay him a lot to do that now. All right, over there on Bill Maher's show, he had a fine conversation with actor Robert De Niro. And of course, if you've got Oscar-winning Robert De Niro with this great history of doing Godfather movies and The Deer Hunter and Taxi Driver and, well, pretty much every Martin Scorsese movie ever written, and Meet the Fockers and Meet the Parents and all that. I mean, you've got Robert De Niro there. Clearly, the only thing you want to talk about is Donald Trump.
So why is Trump winning? I mean, the New York Times poll this week came out, and maybe this will change it with the State of the Union address, but Trump was beating him rather soundly. It was quite a warning light, 48-43, also winning way more among women than he had before, winning outright Latinos. What do you attribute that to?
I don't know. I just don't want to feel the way I did, and many of us don't, after the election in 2016, where we couldn't believe that it happened. The guy is a total monster. And anybody, I don't understand it. I guess they get behind that kind of logic. They want to with people, screw them, because they're unhappy about something. He's such a mean, nasty, hateful person. I never play him as an actor because I can't see any good in him.
Okay. Boy, there's so much. And we got a few more clips here. There's just so much to analyze in this. And I want to warn you, this isn't some gratuitous, oh, let's hear a Hollywood actor trash Trump kind of segment. This is actually incredibly informative. It sheds light on who they are and what they're saying, and it actually allows you to be able to absorb this stuff and communicate about it with your friends, your family, people on your Facebook page. If they start posting these videos, look at what Robert De Niro thinks. First of all, I couldn't give two shakes of a actor's ass about what Robert De Niro thinks. If you're voting because of how Robert De Niro is going to vote, you're doing it wrong. Okay, number one. Number two, did you notice what the entire premise of this was? First, the question: how is he winning? And with women, he's doing better with women than he did 4 years ago. And Latinos, he's winning Latinos outright. How is that possible? I mean, how many more times do we have to call him racist? Everybody knows that he's a sexist racist. So how is that possible? Okay, so the fact that they have to answer that question, ask that question in the first place, should tell you a lot. First of all, I would like to know how many Latino friends these two have. I know I've got friends who are Hispanic, and they are done with Biden, 100% done with Biden. In fact, I'll be honest with you. I have never met a Hispanic person, a Latino in this country, who doesn't express some concern over immigration and our border policies. It's the rich, white, pampered elites in this country who believe we should have an open border. And do you know why? Because their neighborhoods are protected. Their jobs are protected. Their social welfare programs are protected. They don't rely on them. Robert De Niro's life is not changed. Bill Maher's life is not changed one scintilla if we have 50 million illegal immigrants in this country or 50 illegal immigrants in this country. You know whose lives are affected by it? The people who live in the Latino communities in the inner cities and in the suburbs of this country. They're the ones who are affected by this. So they are literally completely out of touch. I mean, literally. They have no actual resonant connection with the issues at hand. So we're going to show you that in a minute, because toward the end of this conversation, they actually get to an issue here. You see, this is such a revelation into how they view the American people, the American voter, and American politics in general. It's all typecasting. He's an actor, after all. It's all stereotypes. This group should think this way. This group should think this way because we, their superiors, have told them that they should. But not about actual issues. You heard Robert De Niro, and let me just play it one more time because it's honestly probably the most revealing moment here. When asked, how is he winning? How is this possible? New York Times has him winning by 5 points. How? And of course, the answer is, well, the American people really hate life under Joe Biden, and they like life under Donald Trump. And the things that they care most about are the things that Trump is talking about and says that he'll actually improve. That's the answer. But watch what Robert De Niro says. His response tells you everything.
I don't know. I just don't want to feel the way I did, and many of us don't, after the election in 2016, where we couldn't believe that it happened.
There it is. I don't know. I don't know how he's winning, but I just know that we don't want to feel that way again. It's his feelings, guys. He feels sad because he wanted his team to win. And he didn't think Trump could win. And then he did win, and we felt really bad about it. I mean, really, it's all about feelings, not about the actual issues. Now, I want to pick up where he left off there, where he was talking about what a terrible person Donald Trump was and how he couldn't play him as an actor. I love that. It's like, well, that's it. This is how Robert De Niro is supposed to inform me on how I'm supposed to vote. Well, let me tell you this. I could never play him in a movie. Oh, well, that's all I need to know. This is a man, by the way, who has played serial killers. This is a man who has played mafia bosses. He'll play those guys, but he couldn't possibly play Donald Trump. All right, so here's the next step in that conversation.
The guy is a total monster. And anybody, I don't understand it. I guess they get behind that kind of logic. They want to fuck with people, screw them, because they're unhappy about something. He's such a mean, nasty, hateful person. I never play him as an actor because I can't see any good in him. Nothing at all. Nothing redeemable in him. And we have to, and whoever the people are who want to vote for him, and they look like intelligent people around there. For some reason, it can't be. It cannot be. If he wins the election, you won't be on the show anymore. He'll come looking for me. There'll be things that happen that none of us can imagine.
Oops, didn't mean to click that. Honestly, I'm not feigning ignorance. Oftentimes I'll watch something and I'll hyperbolically or rhetorically say, I don't get these people, but I truly don't understand this line of argument. And you hear it on shows like this, and you hear it on Morning Joe and MSNBC shows, that if he wins, it's the end. It's the end. He's going to come after me, and you can't imagine the things that he'll do if he wins the presidency. Guys, someone needs to let Robert De Niro know, and Bill Maher and Joe Scarborough and Anderson Cooper. They need to inform them that we know what kind of president he's going to be because we don't have to imagine it. He was president. All these things that he's going to do to shut down the First Amendment and shut down the media and chase down Robert De Niro and throw him in jail and stop having elections. Oh, yeah, he's going to make that claim in a minute. He didn't do that last time. And by the way, there's another revelation here. If you're watching this and you're wondering, why do these people think this way? What is it? Because I feel like I'm watching a lab animal and observing their behavior and telling you why they say the things that they say. And all of it comes back to their sure 100% confident sense of total superiority over you. Their intellectual superiority, their moral superiority, their class superiority. You know, that condescending, patronizing, I don't understand the people who I'm sure they're very intelligent people, but no, you don't. I'm sorry, you're full of crap. You don't think that about them. Who sits down and says that the man that's going to get 80 million votes in this election is an authoritarian, totalitarian, racist, sexist, Islamophobic, homophobic, xenophobe, who's going to shut down our democracy, shed our constitution, upend our constitutional republic, stay president for life, and throw his political opponents in jail? Who then says, but all those 80 million people who are voting for them, I'm sure they're really decent, intelligent people. No. As usual, this is a clear indication that they think nothing of you. They think so little of you. You serve one purpose to Robert De Niro. Well, no, two purposes: to buy tickets to his movies and then for him to mock, make fun of, and laugh at. He's letting you know that right now with his words and his attitude. I don't know if he truly believes that it'll be the end of the republic if Donald Trump wins. I don't think he does. I think that this is just yet another tactic that is being used to terrify you, to shut you up. See, that's the theme of our program today. They just want you to shut up. Get in the corner and do what your moral superiors demand you do. Stop supporting Trump. Stop saying you like him. Stop voting for him. Who the hell do you think you are? That's what we're getting here. And here we've got a little bit more here about what's going to happen if Trump wins.
That's what happens in that kind of a dictatorship, which is what he says. Let's believe him. Take him at his word.
I did from the beginning.
Yeah.
I mean, I said from the very beginning, this guy is never going to concede power, and he still hasn't.
No.
He still hasn't. He just admitted he lost the last election.
Yes, just like Hillary Clinton, he thinks that there were irregularities in the last election. But last I checked, he's not living at 1600 Pennsylvania. Last I checked, he's not the commander-in-chief of the military. They're absolutely nuts. They are absolutely nuts. I've been saying from the beginning, he'll never concede power. Guys, then why is he even running for re-election? Do they not square what they're saying here? Isn't this the moment where Bill Maher says, well, but I was wrong about that, clearly? And the dictatorship. There's another revelation here that you should all have. Not only do they have an incredibly low opinion of you and the people that you vote for, they have an incredibly low opinion of our Constitution, our country, and our institutions. I'm sorry. Our republic will survive. We're barely surviving Joe Biden, but we're going to make it through. Also, all the dictatorship talk that we get and what an authoritarian does and how you're throwing out. Last I checked, it's this president, Joe Biden, who's trying to throw his political opponent in jail, who's trying to criminalize protesters who challenged the results of the last election, who's trying to criminalize and censor people on social media for expressing opinions about vaccination mandates and voting machines. Last I checked, it was this president who demonizes his political opponents as fascists, not Trump. All right, a little bit more from De Niro.
And he advertises that he will go on. He says he's been cheated out of one term. So maybe we should get rid of a president only gets 2 terms thing.
No, Trump's actually not said that. Or if he has said that, of course, it's a joke. They will never understand the sense of humor of Donald Trump, which is kind of funny because he's actually a professional comedian, this guy.
So
he's a sociopathic Psychopathic, malignant narcissist.
There you go. And they all applaud it. So he's a sociopathic, narcissistic, malignant. What were all the things? But if you support him, I'm sure you're a very intelligent person, says Robert De Niro. At one point in the conversation, though, Bill Maher accidentally stumbled on an actual issue, on an actual thing that is happening that might be one of the reasons why Donald Trump is winning in the polls right now.
But I do see that the governor of New York now is putting the National Guard in the subway. As a New Yorker, what do you think of that? What do you think they'd say if he did it?
Well, if he did it, it's for another reason. Her doing it,
Wait, what? So again, I love this. The issue is the governor of New York calling in the National Guard because of the outrageous violent crime that they just can't get a handle on. This is, by the way, the same governor who called to defund the police. Yeah, we got to defund the police, but we'll bring the military in when things get really bad because the military is better. I mean, Bill Maher's question is, what do you think if he did it? Hey, Bill, the president doesn't call in the National Guard. I mean, maybe he's imagining Donald Trump commanding the U.S. military to take action in the streets, not through the National Guard, but just, battalions of Marines and soldiers storming the streets to keep dear leader in the White House. But then that also shows a lack of understanding, respect, and compassion for the people in the military who would never follow an unlawful order, which that would be. But again, it's a vision into their soul here, isn't it? About how much contempt they have for us and for our country and the military. But De Niro's response is great here. Well, it'd be awful if Donald Trump did this because he'd do it for a different reason. But see, Kathy Hochul's doing it for a noble reason. So the action of calling in the National Guard and the military to keep law and order in the streets is only predicated, and it's only judged, whether it's positive or negative, based on what we believe or perceive the motives of the person doing it might be. But that's some high-end thinking, isn't it? Or actually the most base, shallow thinking in the world. If their guy does it, it's bad. If my guy does it, it's good.
I haven't heard about it. They just told me just before, but I don't know. I don't have an answer for that. I'm not happy about it. But
crime in New York, I mean, you know something about that.
Well,
You've played it. It's happened to you.
I don't have.
Got rid of the
that's
filth.
Organized crime. I'm sorry to hear that, and I hope I don't know whatever I can do to help alleviate that situation. Whatever, I don't know. I can't.
Well, I think people feel like there's a lack of common sense on the left and the right. Would you at least agree with that?
I would agree with that.
Right, and that gives him a giant opening.
See, the real problem with the violent crime in our streets and the fact that people are getting knifed and murdered and mugged and robbed and pushed into subway tracks and attacked while they're riding the subway, and they're unable to go to work or pick up their children from school, and certainly unable to let their children walk on the streets alone or with their friends without adult supervision or maybe an armed guard. The real problem is that gives Trump an opening. Not that people are getting raped and killed and people's livelihoods are being robbed, and no, that's secondary. It's that it gives Trump an opening and gives you something to get mouthy about too. Yeah, it's and just so you know, Mr. Maher and Mr. De Niro, this is not a right and left issue. Both sides. It's not a both sides thing. It's very clear what one side is doing with regard to crime in this country and what the other side is doing to actually encourage crime in this country. One other insight into this entire Robert De Niro, Bill Maher exchange here that I think that you should take away from you, because you're going to see a lot of this over the next 9 months during this campaign. This is just the tip of the iceberg. Be ready for it. I want you to look at this stuff through the right lenses. Let me just tell you the biggest takeaway from all of this. Did you see Robert De Niro having to deal in real time with an issue that he didn't really know much about, but it should be a pretty simple one? Crime has gotten so bad in New York that the governor has had to call in the National Guard to help the police in the streets and the subway systems. What do you think about that? And did you see how he was stammering and stumbling and unable to come up with any principled position on it or any sort of real-time observation about it? Yeah, you saw that, right? I saw that. Here's the real takeaway. Robert De Niro and actors like him who like to stand up on the stage of the Oscars last night and lecture to you about your politics, they're not very smart. But boy, they get a platform, don't they? So Riley Gaines, the swimmer who has turned into an accidental activist over the transgender athletics policy, found herself on the Joe Rogan podcast the other day. And there's a section of this where she tells her story about what happened in that infamous NCAA race where she and the athlete known as Leah Thomas tied. People don't know that. You know, I think it was Keith Olbermann who in one of his unhinged drunken rants called Riley Gaines a loser and a mediocre athlete, and she's only popular, but you know, she's like a 12-time All-American. And she literally tied the 6'4" man in this race. They finished with the exact same time. She is a national champion. I don't think people know that. I think they think she's out there as an activist because she lost. No, actually, that's not why. Do you know her whole story? She's told it before, but not the way she told it right here with Joe Rogan, and I want you to hear it.
Tied. We get out of the water. We go, yeah, you can see here, we both went 143.40. Not one of us going 143.39 or 143.41, tying. Get out of the water, go behind the awards podium. The NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself. Thomas, who is towering over me, right, 6'4". And this official looks at both of us and says, "Great job, you two. But you tied. And we only have one trophy, so we're going to give the trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you don't get one." My
Jesus Christ
heart rate was still high, having just competed. My adrenaline was still pumping. And so the first thing that I thought ended up being the first thing that I said. And the first thought that I had was just what you had just said, right? Like, isn't this everything that Title IX was passed to prevent from happening? What do you mean you're going to give the trophy to the man in the women's 200 freestyle? I asked the question that no one dared ask all season. And I said, why? Which, of course, he didn't have an answer as to why. They didn't give him a script of what to say when someone asks you the dreaded question of why. And so his first excuse he came up with, he's stumbling on his words, and he's, well, we're actually just doing this in chronological order, he said. And so I said, okay, do you mean alphabetical? Because G comes before T. Otherwise, I literally have no idea what you're being chronological about, right? We tied. So again, what's your rationale here? And finally, he realized that he didn't have a justification. He didn't have an answer for this. And so, and I actually appreciate his honesty. This is when his face changed. He looked sad. His voice changed. I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say. But this official looked at me and said, "Riley, I am so sorry, but we have been advised as an organization that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that the trophy is in Leah's hands. Again, you can pose with this one, but you have to give yours back. Leah takes the trophy home. You go home empty-handed, end of story. We can eventually mail you one."
Oh my God.
Is what they said. So it was like that moment when I felt guilty at that point. I felt guilty for participating in the farce. I felt guilty for even getting in the water at this point. And so it kind of hit me. I won't say I was necessarily cowering, because I didn't feel like that to me. I wasn't necessarily scared to approach the topic. I just thought someone else would.
Okay, now there's more to this, and I do want to play more, but it's a good moment to take a break and sort of reflect on specifically what's going on here with Riley Gaines as she tells the story. And I'm sure the anger and outrage that you're feeling right now. And also what I believe is sort of a bigger picture allegory here for where you and I are in this country with the powers that be from the political left. First, did you know that about this story? Did you know that they tied? Did you know that Leah Thomas, the 6'4" man who swam as a woman in this freestyle sprint race that Riley Gaines had trained her entire life for, that she had qualified in the SEC at University of Kentucky at the highest levels of American competition, just short of the Olympics, that she had actually fought her ass off and tied this guy. And her reward was to not have a trophy to go home with that day. Her reward was she had to sit back and see the man pose for the pictures and get all of the publicity for winning. And it was the institution. As you just heard, the person from the NCAA said, we have been instructed that any pictures, if Leah Thomas is the winner, he gets the trophy. If you don't feel outraged, not just on behalf of Riley Gaines, but on behalf of all of the women who are right now being displaced in this country. And when we raise the issue and we say this is outrageous, this is disgusting, this is basic fairness is being trampled on, put through the shredder, burned in a bonfire, and then defecated on by the institutions that are supposed to be protecting young women like Riley Gaines. Basic fairness is thrown out the window for this political agenda that makes no logical sense. And our daughters are the ones who have to suffer because of it. How are you not outraged by this? We keep pointing this out and saying this, and we're told by all of the intellectual superiors in our life that make all the rules that we are forced to abide by, that this never happens. Oh, this is such a rare instance. It's a one-off. It's not. No, actually, it's happening more and more and more and more. And guess what? If it even happens once, it's wrong. I am outraged for Riley Gaines, yes. You know who else I'm outraged for? I'm outraged for the woman who worked just as many years as Riley Gaines and maybe in the qualifying rounds finished literally a split second slower than the 8 swimmers that made it to the finals. And that young woman didn't get a chance to compete because there was a man there competing as a woman. I am outraged for her. I am outraged for her parents who drove her to practice daily, early in the morning, if it's anything like my child who was a swimmer in high school. But the parents give because they want their daughter to think that they can do anything and they can achieve anything if they put their mind to it. And here's the thing about that. As a dad of 2 daughters, we tell our little girls that. We let them know that if they put their mind to it and they work, they can literally do anything they try to do. But we know when we say that to our daughters, then when it comes to certain things, well, they can't actually do anything they want. If it comes to certain things that require a basic type of strength and athletic ability, and they're trying to do something that a man is doing, they're not going to be able to do it as well. They're not going to be as strong or as fast and have the same physical ability that a man has. When we tell our daughters when they're growing up that if they just work hard, they can achieve anything, we know that it's within the confines of what other girls are attempting to do and trying to do. And we always had the faith in our institutions that our little girls would be protected from men intruding into that world so that we don't look like liars. Honey, you work hard, you put in the effort, you use the gifts that God gave you, you live right, you can do anything. And then here comes a man pretending to be a woman, and he walks away from the trophy. And Riley Gaines' dad is standing there looking at his daughter saying, I'm sorry. I never imagined they would do this. I'm sorry. That's the heartbreaking reality that we are now forced to face because of the cultural Marxists who are forcing this issue into our society for no reason. Nobody needs this. We can function perfectly without it. But then the allegory. You know what? I'm going to take a quick sip of water. We're going to watch the end of this, and then we'll talk bigger picture about what Riley Gaines' story actually means, even well beyond the transgender issue here, with regard to where you and I are in this country right now, with the political and cultural shifts that they are forcing on us. Here's Riley Gaines finishing up her story.
I thought a coach would say something. I thought some other swimmer. I thought someone with political power, someone within the NCAA. Quite honestly, I thought someone's dad would come down there and yank this man out of our locker rooms. But it was in that moment where we were standing on the podium, myself included. I'm standing on the podium, and we're clapping, and we're smiling, and we're cheering. And it hit me. I'm like, what in the world are we clapping for? Because, I mean, really what we're applauding is our own erasure, our own demolition. And so it was right then and there that, again, like a slap across the face, I was like, how in the world can we as women, as female athletes, expect someone to stand up for us if we aren't even willing to stand up for us? Like, this has to come from us.
Really fantastic stuff. And Riley Gaines is, I mean, every time you see her, you just want to celebrate and cheer and say, go girl, go. And she's attracting more and more and more people and other female athletes to her cause. And she is literally going to change the narrative on this story and change this country, change NCAA policies, and ultimately, I think, change the world because of her activism, because she's telling her story. There's something bigger here. What she just described is very specific to the transgender athletes intruding on women's private spaces and on their competition at the high school collegiate level, right? It's very narrow. But it also represents everything that we are facing right now. Do you ever feel when you see the headlines that it's insurmountable? We're drinking out of a fire hose, whether it's the transgender activism, whether it's the critical race theory stuff, whether it's the border, whether it's the economy, whether it's the education and curriculum that's being forced onto our kids, the crime issues, all of it. You can look at every single one of those issues and you can draw a direct line from the problems we're experiencing right now in our country to warped, misguided, quasi, if not full-on Marxist policies that have been implemented by elected officials or unelected officials. I mean, the transgender issue is obvious there, right? When you look at what our school boards and our other institutions have forced onto our culture and our society in the name of equity or equality or what have you. Same with the curriculum, the critical race theory stuff, the marches, the defund the police movements, the reallocation of resources and policies from law enforcement so that they don't arrest, or if they are arresting criminals, then you've got the prosecutors who won't prosecute them and put them back out on the streets. The border, of course, is a perfect example of this as well, where we in Western civilization have known for centuries that a nation has every right and responsibility to protect its borders and maintain its borders. And yet it takes a cultural Marxist radical left-wing ideology to inject this asinine idea that borders and walls that protect borders are in some way racist and wrong and inappropriate. And if you ask the Democrats right now, who doesn't have the right to come to this country from around the world, they can't answer that question because they don't think anyone should be excluded. It literally makes no sense. None of it makes sense. Our economic policies right now are driven by radical left-wing ideologues in Washington, D.C., who are injecting their political and philosophical agenda onto basic market economics. If they just got the hell out of the way and let businesses thrive, we'd thrive and our economy would be great. How do I know? Because in my lifetime, it's happened 3 times. Under Reagan, under W. Bush, and under Trump. They get into office, they say, let's just let the economy go. Let's stop trying to tinker with it. Let's get the government out, and everything goes great. To national security issues right now, where, I'm sorry, if you look at the Middle East right now and you think that, well, you know, both sides have a point here in the whole Israel-Hamas thing, you have a broken moral compass. I could go on and on and on, but everything you are worried about right now in our society, from great geopolitical national security issues to the most micro of micro issues with your children's education in your kids' school, it all has the hidden hand of radical left-wing ideologues. It's actually not very hidden, pushing their agenda and injecting it into a society that we had built pretty nicely here, and into cultural norms that we knew worked. Why do we have homeless in the streets and people living in tents? Why? Not because we think it's good for them, not because we think society is just fine if we allow people to sleep on the streets and live on the streets and defecate on the streets. No, we've known for centuries that that creates crime and mayhem and disease. It takes somebody with an advanced degree in a liberal arts college to inject their Marxist ideology. Well, this is a problem with affordable housing. So until you can provide a home for an individual, regardless of whether they have an income or not, then we're just going to have to let them live on the streets and ruin our society. The hell is that? There's an easy way to solve it. Make it a criminal activity and arrest the people who break the law and put them in jail. Guess what? As soon as you start doing that, people stop living on the streets, and people stop shoplifting, and people stop breaking your border laws, and they stop living and working illegally in this country because you're going to start enforcing the law. And men will stop trying to compete against women because you've got rules and standards, and you say, no, a man is a person with male body parts and a woman is a person with female body parts. And we have 2 different criteria for their athletic competitions. You lay down rules, enforce the rules, and suddenly order comes back to society. That's the through line through all of these problems. And what Riley Gaines demonstrates is Toto the dog pulling back the curtain and showing the man behind it operating the Wizard of Oz mechanisms. You just heard her say, I was waiting for somebody to do something about this. I was waiting for, you know what? It's the scene from Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. When they turn back time, and Harry's standing there waiting for his dad to do the spell that will get rid of the things that were the Dementors that were attacking he and Sirius Black. And then he realizes, wait a minute, I'm sitting here waiting for my dad to do it because I thought I saw my dad doing it, but it wasn't him, it was me. And he realizes he's got to do it. That's Riley Gaines. She was waiting and waiting and waiting for somebody to step up and do something about it, realized it wasn't happening, and says, oh, I guess that means it's me. And I think you know where I'm going with this. It's time for you to step up. It's time for you to be inspired by Riley Gaines. It's time for you to do your Patronus charm and put this place back where it belongs. Because we've all been waiting and waiting for some sanity. We've all been waiting and waiting for people to step up and say, no, 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 no. We don't need to reinvent the wheel here. We don't need to upend our society. We don't need to allow all of these things to go to hell. We had things pretty good in this country, and there were a lot of things that we just sort of relied on, you know, like the basics. What's the difference between a man and a woman? And, you know, if you break the law, you get arrested and you get put in jail. That worked out pretty well. Time to go back to it. But it does. It takes us. It takes us. It takes us. It takes you. It takes me. It takes Riley Gaines, takes courage, takes Nancy Mace to stand up to George Stephanopoulos. It takes us to stand up courageously and say, no, an illegal immigrant is an illegal immigrant. And you're not going to tell me what words I'm allowed to use. It takes all of us. And we're going to get there. We're going to get there together. One more thing from Riley Gaines and Joe Rogan, by the way, that I wanted to share. It's really great, actually. And I think it's a perfect way to end this. I don't know if you've noticed from Joe Rogan lately, but he's been an avowed atheist or agnostic most of his political career, and certainly his public career and his podcasting career. But lately, he's been seeing all of these things going on, and he's seeing it through the eyes of a believer, or at least someone who's flirting with being a believer. And in hearing Riley Gaines' story, he was inspired not just by her, but he was inspired by the fact that all these things are happening and these basic norms are being upended, maybe because we don't have God in our society anymore. You know, God shed his grace on thee. What are we doing with that grace right now? Joe Rogan is starting to get it. And I wanted you to see this exchange about that, just to button things up today.
What was really going on? Because a lot of it seems too on the money. Like if we wanted to try to put this through some sort of a logical filter or figure out, like, is someone really trying to warn us about the natural progression that all societies and all civilizations go down if you don't have a moral compass and if you don't follow and adhere to the rules of God?
Well, there's still stuff that hasn't yet, right? Like what has been prophesied that hasn't yet happened. So time will tell, right? I think his return is past due.
Well, amen to that. And I think it's a good way to end today. Considering we're in the middle of Lent, we see Easter on the horizon. And, well, yes, his return is, let's just say, imminent. Or not. We're not supposed to dwell on that. But we could use a little Jesus right now. Thanks for watching today. We really appreciate it. We'll be back tomorrow at noon live on Rumble. If you're watching after the fact, join us live sometime. But if you can't, that's cool. Leave us comments, though. I love all the comments we're getting. I'm trying to respond to as many as possible. Thanks for following. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for sharing our videos. And we'd love some topic selections from you as well. Leave that in the comments, too. The whole team here at Town Hall Media, we check out those comments all the time. Thanks for watching. My name's Larry O'Connor. Please call me Larry.